Sarah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming to the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee meeting today, January 21st at 5 p.m. Is there anybody here for courtesy of the floor?
Either raise your hand in Zoom or dial *9 on your phone. None seen. There are no one's answering.
Okay. I do want to make sure, we were supposed to have a presentation today from Penn Environment. Are they on yet?
I don't see them, but I did send.
Yes. I'm sorry. Which meeting? I'm sorry.
For the ELU?
Never mind. Sorry.
We did send them a direct link to the meeting.
No, I just talked to them at 3 o'clock, and they said that they would be logging on at 5. So that is Lynn Rothman is from the EAC in Bethlehem. Yes, I see that she is on. Hi, Lynn. How are you? I'm just waiting for David Masser from Penn Environment, but I'll introduce this resolution. If you had a chance, I'm hoping that we can join this Act 20 litigation. Penn Environment contacted me several weeks ago about joining it, since we had passed a resolution concerning single-use plastic bag bans, and the litigation has to do with the state exemption that prevents municipalities and also counties in Pennsylvania from enacting any sort of ordinances or resolutions that would ban single-use plastic bags. I'm trying to make sure that Mr. Masur has the proper link. So I'm going to give it to him now. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I do know that Lynn Rothman is on from the EAC in Bethlehem City. If you'd like to say anything about your work in Bethlehem City on the plastic ban, I'd be more than welcome to entertain that here.
I really, thank you, Tara. I really don't have any updates. We had submitted a proposal recommending that City Council pass a plastic bag ban. And then, of course, the state prohibited that from occurring. And then we suggested they try and get it grandfathered in between the budget cycle, and that did not come to fruition. So I'm actually interested in hearing what David has to say as well.
Right. And from what I understand, there was somebody who worked with you, Beth, I forget her last name, but she did do some studies on, or at least a survey of some sort, surveying businesses, did she not?
She did survey some businesses within the city and determined that there was support for it. And I know you were trying to set up an introduction with her and me and David for next week.
Sarah, David has joined the meeting.
Great. Lynn, do you have, so basically Bethlehem City intended to pass an ordinance, but was unable to because of the state ban, right?
You're muted, Lynn.
Thought you said that.
Where I'm like, where did she go?
She's muted, apparently.
Oh, this is so much fun, isn't it? Oh my gosh. Okay.
I've been trying to get.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
there.
sorry.
I think
The
she.
host wouldn't allow me to unmute. I don't know that City Council actually went so far as to write any kind of ordinance. This was just our recommendation, and I think we're open to it. And then before they could try and pass anything, the state put their ban on plastic bag bans.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. And so finally, thank you. We have David here from Penn Environment to tell us a little bit about the Act 20 litigation and joining. I'll give the floor to David.
Great. Thanks, Tara. It's great to see you all. Hi, Lynn. It's nice to see you through the ether. As Tara said, I'm David Mazer. I'm the executive director for the statewide citizen-based nonprofit group, Penn Environment. I'm based in Philly. Don't hold that against me, please. But I thought maybe I could give a quick update on some of the work happening around the single-use plastics preemption. And maybe if it's okay, Tara, and for the rest of the folks here, I can just do the Cliff Note version of sort of how we got to where we are for some context, and then maybe next steps and see if there are questions. That seems okay. And I think I can do all that fairly quickly. I think the quick background on this is that I think folks know that there is growing research and data about all of the environmental negative effects from plastic pollution, from the things we experience in our day-to-day lives, litter blowing around in our communities, plastic litter in our parks, the hidden tax costs of getting it out of our drains and cleaning it up in our downtown areas that we as taxpayers pay, and the issue of microplastics, that plastics are now working their way through our ecosystem and back up our food chain, and we're finding microplastics in our bodies now more and more. As there's been sort of this growing movement to tackle plastic pollution around the country and across the globe, there was a push to get local officials around the nation to implement policies to reduce our reliance on single-use plastics, things we use once and often then throw them away. As that movement grew, there was pushback in Harrisburg, and there was an effort starting about 5 years ago. The legislature had a freestanding bill to preempt local officials from taking steps to address plastic pollution. That bill was not signed into law, made its way to the governor's desk, and he vetoed it. And that basically stopped the motion on a freestanding bill. Since legislators in Harrisburg couldn't do it through a freestanding bill in 2019, they embedded language into a must-pass piece of legislation that's part of the Commonwealth's budget process, one of the fiscal code bills, so a giant omnibus bill, that set into effect a 12-month preemption from local officials enacting single-use plastic policies, fees, bans, or otherwise on any plastic products. As I think we were just talking about here with Bethlehem, and we saw in other localities, that had a really stifling effect. Most local officials who are looking at potentially doing this put the brakes on it. And many thought, oh, we'll come back to it in a year when the General Assembly's preemption is lifted. But sadly, although not shockingly, then again, last summer, the legislature put an extended preemption into the 2020 fiscal code. I should say they amended it to make it a much more far-reaching exemption, preemption, because it is not only a 1-year preemption, it is the way the language is written, it says 1 year or 6 months after Governor Wolf lifts his COVID emergency order, whichever is longer. And that's certainly important because we have emergency orders even today that have been on the books for years. And so that added language was certainly detrimental to, who knows when that will end for local officials to take this on. So that's sort of the quick legislative backdrop. I will add that I lobbied pretty hard to try and keep the legislature from doing this. I mean, I'm not a big proponent of preemption in general, and certainly around environmental policies, but to no avail. But when it passed, it seemed like it was a fairly clear violation of part of the Commonwealth law, which is called single subject. And not to get into too much maybe wonkiness here, but basically Pennsylvania has a law called single subject where the subject of a law has to match the content of said law. And I think the idea is pretty basic, that you couldn't take a bill that's about having apple pie be Pennsylvania state pie and then put something in it to preempt local officials from gun control or a woman's right to choose or something controversial in a fairly non-controversial bill. So in 2019, I started to have attorneys here in the state and across the country look at Pennsylvania's, the process by which Pennsylvania did the preemption. And every single attorney has said it's a clear violation of this, the Commonwealth's Constitution on single subject. Between the time that the first preemption was put into place, both Philadelphia and Westchester Borough passed their own ordinances with a start date after what was expected to be the end of the first preemption. That got extended, as I mentioned. So both of those municipalities are now potentially violating the Commonwealth law. And that spurred the Philadelphia City Council members who supported their plastic bag ban law to work with the law department, do research, and I think that they are looking closely at potentially taking steps to get clarity on what the law should be. They think that, as I said, the process by which the preemption happened is not legal under the Commonwealth's Constitution, and so we'll ask the Commonwealth courts for clarity. And so that's sort of maybe I'll stop there. Hopefully that wasn't too long, but maybe that's helpful background at least. I don't know if there are questions on that, Tara, or other folks.
No, I think that was a good background. I think that what we're trying to do here is, regardless of how you feel about single-use plastic bag bans, or even that, the core of this litigation is about holding the state legislature accountable for the violation of the Constitution, and also working with our community partners to strengthen their lawsuit and making sure that the state can't overstep its reach in telling municipalities and counties what they can and cannot do when they have the power to do those things. I think that's very important. I know that we did pass a resolution on this in the past, and there are several municipalities within the county who had looked at an ordinance to ban single-use plastic bags or single-use plastic straws or even styrofoam. Forks Township, I know that the Palmer EAC is looking into it. Obviously, Lynn Rothman is here. She explained the Bethlehem EAC's interest and their recommendation, but you have EACs making recommendations that now the state has tied the hands of the of the city councils or the municipal councils who no longer have a choice of whether they want to do this or not, because that's been taken away from them by the state. I think it's important that we join this litigation because Penn Environment has been a good partner. They are part of our community. They work very hard in the state of Pennsylvania to make sure that our environmental policy is sound. Is there any other discussion, or do you want to add anything else, David?
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'd love to certainly take questions, and I see one hand. The only thing I'd add is to put a stronger point on, I think, what you just said, which is, certainly it's becoming more and more common that the General Assembly on a whole set of issues is using preemption to strip local control. And, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's important that localities, when the Commonwealth's General Assembly does it in ways that are illegal or against our Constitution, are standing up against that. We're seeing it on tobacco issues, gun issues. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I just think this is going to become the trend, sadly, until we work to get clarity on where those lines are drawn. So to just reiterate that point, I think.
Thank you. And Mr. McClure, you had your hand raised?
I did. I beg your indulgence. David, my name's Lamont McClure. I'm the Northampton County Executive. It'll ultimately be my responsibility to manage through our solicitor's office any litigation that we may or may not join. First, I'd like to let you know that Councilwoman Zirinsky is literally our conscience when it comes to environmental issues. She may not be all of council's, but she's mine. I often follow her lead on these issues. So I want you to know that I'm simpatico with where she comes from in her heart. With that said, I have a couple of questions for you. One, there is currently no litigation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Two, irrespective of whether Northampton County was to join the lawsuit, if the Commonwealth Court and ultimately the Supreme Court determined that they did violate the single issue clause, that would have statewide implication, would apply to us whether or not we were involved in the suit, right?
Yes.
And third, Governor Wolf in his state of the emergency as under Section D said the General Assembly or a local governmental body or agency may not enact or enforce any law, rule, regulation, or ordinance imposing a tax on or relating to the use, disposition, sale, prohibition, or restriction of single-use plastics, auxiliary containers, wrappings, and polystyrene containers until July 1st, 2021, or 6 months after the order issued by the governor on March 6, 2020, published at 50 PAB 1644, March 21st, 2020, and any renewal of the state disaster emergency, whichever is later. I think the governor renewed again on November 30th. So I'm right that the earliest we could join a lawsuit that was filed would be in May.
The earliest you could join a lawsuit.
Well, so no action can be taken until May, at least based upon what I'm reading here in the governor's declaration. Am I right about that?
Well, can I ask I'm sort of confused by the question, so maybe I'll ask for clarity. When you say no action, you mean no action by the Commonwealth or by Northampton County?
It says by local, by the Commonwealth or a locality. So, yes.
Yeah. So I'll try and answer, but if I'm incorrect in what I hear the question, I'll apologize, and you can correct me. But I think in the earliest you could enact or take action, I think is actually July 1st, because it's 1 year or 6 months, and 1 year after because it's the fiscal code, the fiscal year would be July 1st, I think would be the earliest that the county could have a law.
Oh, so I'm wrong. It's not May, it's July.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that important correction.
I think that's it, but now because the 6 months, it's really the earliest you could do would be if the governor lifted his emergency order today, which certainly he's not doing. Oh, I get July is later than 6 months. My calendar.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
So,
It would be, if it was 6 months, it would be sometime at the end of May.
right.
Okay, but thank you. Look, it's a disaster, all of the plastic in our oceans. It breaks all of our hearts when we see the pictures of these blobs floating around. And I couldn't be more enthusiastic about our local municipalities doing something about plastic throughout throughout the county. And hopefully at one point, the courts and the legislature will give them the power to do that. Thank you. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
David, can you tell everybody about the timeline of the lawsuit and why I'm bringing this to council today?
Sure. We think as best as we can sort of garner, Philadelphia and the participating localities will probably look for filing in late February. Is
Okay.
sort of the timeline. And I should add one thing, maybe if it's okay, Tara, that has come up often is the issue of cost for participating localities, given the state of the economy we're in. And I think we feel fairly confident for two reasons that this is not a financial burden on the participating localities. There are two reasons. One, because it is a constitutional case, by the nature, it's a sleek legal process. So it's not like you have discovery, you don't have expert witnesses. You know, it's essentially two attorneys before the judge, one saying this violates the Commonwealth Constitution and one does not. So that's one factor. The second thing is the Philadelphia Law Department, I think, is pretty graciously, since they have a full gaggle of attorneys, has offered to basically work almost, for lack of a better term, like a pro bono attorney for participating localities to keep the costs down. So their full-time attorneys will draft all the documents, file all the documents, and yet give the participating localities full editorial control. So it's sort of the best of all worlds. You save money, but can make sure that you're represented in the court filings the way you'd want to be represented, make edits as needed. And so we think that basically the fact that Philadelphia will shoulder most of the financial costs for this will make it really negligible for participating localities. And I think it's the reason why other municipalities much smaller than Northampton County are planning on participating.
Right. So basically the strength comes from multiple municipalities and counties participating. That helps strengthen the lawsuit. And from what I understand, I think Lehigh County is planning on participating as well, or trying to put something forward as well. Am I correct?
We've had conversations with folks in Lehigh County. I don't know if they're honestly where they are in agreeing or not, but there are certainly many other municipalities. And I think your first point, Tara, I think, and Lamont brought it up, I mean, the issue of would it pass or not if Northampton County isn't involved? I mean, to me, it begs two questions. One is, I mean, I don't know. Certainly there's value added by having Northampton County or other localities participate. If for no other reason, I think we all know, and I sort of joked at it earlier, things that in the Commonwealth appear to pit the Commonwealth against the city of Philadelphia, which is a constant sort of political trope we hear, I think taints the merits and the importance and profundity of what we're talking about here. So showing that this isn't just Philly and the legislature ticky-tacky going at each other, but this is a real problem that counties and municipalities are addressing together, I think is important. You know, so I think that's number one. Number two, you know, as I've talked with you about it, Tara, I'm just sort of a believer, like this is the golden rule, you know, and sometimes we lose some of these things in politics, but I think when the public has their power taken away from them, when one set of local officials are trying to fight the good fight and are under the gun for that. I just think it's valuable to have Northampton say, we believe in local control and we believe in protecting our environment. And if the tables were turned, which is why I think it's the golden rule, and it was Northampton County under the gun, and they were going to other townships, counties to ask for assistance, that you would hope that they would respond to the call. You know, so for me, that's why those issues are pretty important. I do think there's value added in the county participating, either because you care about the environment or you believe that the constituents and the people they elect locally are the ultimate democracy that we have in the Commonwealth.
Right. We have to protect that democracy and make sure that they're upholding the Constitution. And when the state decides that they're going to violate the Constitution and use preemptions to stifle local control, I think that it is important that we as elected officials sign on and say that we're going to do something about it. Regardless whether it's what issue it is. But Mr. Myers, I believe I saw your hand up before.
Yeah, you saw my hand up before. I'm sitting here listening to this, and the only thought that's going through my mind right now is, what is the cost to the consumer? What's the cost to the everyday person who uses this plastic bag? Yes, we know that plastic bags are a royal pain and you know what, and they're all over the place. But at what cost, if they decide to do away with these bags, is that going to cost the average Joe who's trying to feed their family?
Yes, thank you for the point, Mr. Myers. And you're talking about just
I'm
so
talking about me and you and everybody else who goes to the store and buys something and brings it home in a plastic bag. Now, I might be comfortable saying, okay, but the person next to me who's struggling to feed her 3 children on a, I don't know, $1,200 a month budget, that might be a cost to them they can't incur.
Yeah, that's great. And you're talking about the fee itself. I'm just trying to get it in. Yeah, so it's a great point, and maybe I can say a couple things this. One is certainly by standing up for the right of the county or its townships that are embedded in the county to be able to make a decision, I think is important, but you wouldn't have to make that decision to stand up for local control and the right to make strong environmental decisions by joining the suit. So one thing would be, you know, I'm biased, as you can imagine, running an environmental group. I like the county to join the case and take strong action against plastics. But in this case, really, I'm trying to make the case for joining the litigation to help all the 67 counties and the embedded localities. So that's one thing. Number two is if the county moved ahead, there are a whole set of, plastic bag fees and bans have been implemented in hundreds of cities, towns, counties, and now states across the country. And we've learned a lot of best practices. So for example, the cost issue, especially on those, like you said, where, every dollar counts. There are many cases around the nation where localities have included language in their bag. They do a fee instead of a straight up ban, and then they include a SNAP exemption to protect the most vulnerable consumers who then would not have to pay that fee as one way to protect vulnerable citizens. And I think it's a great point because I don't think we should ignore that topic. But so to me, there's two pieces. You can certainly move ahead with the litigation and never pass the ordinance. That'd be sad for me, but that would be fine. The other is you can tweak the ordinance to use some of those best practices that have been implemented to protect vulnerable consumers.
Well, that's all fine and dandy what you're saying, but as a man who spent 27 years in retail sales in the grocery chain, you can't convince me that the ownership is not going to attach that into the product that as the consumer is using, that's not going to get hurt by this. That is just the nature of that beast. That's, they're in to make a profit. I'm all for trying to do the right thing, but at what point do we just wait and see if, the folks above us who are paid a lot more money to make the right decision, they make the right decision that the consumer itself is not going to be hurt. I'm worried about the little guy.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the everyday working person, and you're asking us to join a litigation, jump on something that doesn't sound like a lot of people are involved with at this point. But yes, the big bad boy from Philadelphia or the big bad boy from Pittsburgh is going to go to battle with the state. And that's always going to happen. I don't care what event they got going on. They're going to go toe to toe about a lot of things. My concern is I'm worried about the small man, who's struggling, or the elderly person that just wants to make sure they got enough money to survive each week or each month.
They are kind of two different issues. The litigation is very separate from, like, we'd never have to pass the ordinance at all, but I think we should entertain it. There are over 200 counties and municipalities in 23 states that have passed these kinds of ordinances. There's at least 8 states that I know of that have passed a statewide ban, and this is coming. And a lot of it is because plastic, it's so prevalent. We only recycle 9.1% of the plastic that we consume. So when you look at just plastic bags, there's 102.1 billion plastic bags. And if we're only recycling 9.1% of that, then that number that is not recycled is 92.81 billion bags that are sitting, taking 1,000 years to decompose. And if you think that that doesn't have implications on vulnerable communities that have health impacts and environmental impacts, there is a cost at one end or the other. But regardless of the way that you feel about plastic bags or single-use plastic bags, the idea is that violation of the Constitution in Pennsylvania by the state legislator to use preemption to override local control is a problem that we should nip in the bud. It's a problem that we should address, and joining this lawsuit would address that. Go ahead, Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll start on the lawsuit. My question would be, has our solicitor reviewed, is the lawsuit a document at this point? If it is a document, did our solicitors review this to see, and did we review an agreement to see what the cost would be to the county? Did the administration get to look at this stuff yet? I mean, this is a big jump for us to jump in a lawsuit with Philadelphia. And, with all due respect, I don't believe a judge cares about the state and the relationship between the state and Philadelphia. Hopefully he doesn't get into that when he makes the decision on this. Hopefully he looks at the Constitution. So I don't know if there's real value in you said, hey, it makes it look like it isn't that Philadelphia state problem. I hope to God a judge doesn't let that affect his opinion on a constitutional matter. That being said, I am 100% against plastic. I think it was a big mistake that humans made. And they said it themselves when they came up with the product. They said this product will last forever. And they advertised it in the 50s or 40s or 50s, I guess, when it came out. I mean, it's a disaster. I can't stand when I kayak in the river and see the plastic. It's more bottles than bags, quite frankly. And when I traveled overseas, there's answers to this stuff. I couldn't believe when I saw this recyclable plastic bottle. It said, recyclable. And I'm thinking, yeah, everything ends up in the garbage. But it was actually a plant-based bottle. All that being said, the problem with doing anything with bags right now, the timing is terrible. We're going through a pandemic. I'm not going to keep talking about with Carrie, but that's real. I mean, 15 cents doesn't affect me, but it does affect. We're trying to keep people from being evicted from their homes. We're spending money, throwing money at trying to keep people. So it's not, I don't, I get it. There's ways to, but it's, the other problem I have is, did we talk to the chamber? What is their opinion on this? Small businesses, did we get input from them? I understand small business, and I'm going to go back to my timing. Half the businesses, and I'm being generous to us, but half the businesses thinks the government overstepped their boundaries. I don't think it's time to put more, it's just bad timing. I just think right now to put more restrictions, and we couldn't do it right now, I get that, because we're not allowed to, but to even talk about putting more requirements on business right now by the state, I think it's just really bad timing. Let this thing move on a little bit. We've got to stop the plastic. I get that. Timing's bad for the bag. I think we need to do a lot of research before we jump into a lawsuit. Thank you.
Can I say a couple things to that, Tara? Because there's a lot there, but I'll try and hit it. And I appreciate all the feedback. And I agree with you. I hope the courts don't use politics, although I'd also maybe say we certainly saw over the past 2 months some of our Commonwealth courts make some decisions that I'd argue were based in some politics that maybe they shouldn't have moved ahead with. But I think a couple of points here would be, one is I think we should try and just separate the suit from moving ahead with the ordinance, because certainly a lot of the things you mentioned, the fee, the timing of doing the bag ban or fee, again, if you wouldn't have to pass any ordinance to be part of the suit. To your first point about the documents, the Philadelphia Law Department has not finished the documents, the memorandum of agreement, the filing. They certainly, I think to their credit, have said they will get on the phone and do a Zoom like this with any solicitor in any township or county, and they've done many. I've done multiple with their attorneys this week and other solicitors around the Commonwealth. And they would certainly say that any locality should only move ahead if the solicitor feels that it's a viable case to join legally, and that the locality can show harm as met by the legal reading of the solicitor. So I 110% agree. If before you'd ever do it, the solicitor should try and poke every hole through it. Everybody should see the documents. All of those pieces are, I think, really crucial. But I think the Philadelphia. Now, if we move back to the legislation and not the litigation piece, is a really good example where the way that they have proposed to do their fee structure, which again is sort of held up because of the preemption. So they have a law, they can't really amend the law. I mean, they could, but it just gets complicated legally. They've looked at doing a fee at point of sale. So at the register, there would be an exemption that for SNAP eligible. And that policy has the support of the grocers, the labor union, so Pat Eiding at AFL-CIO and UFCW, Wendell, have all supported it. The owners of ShopRite have supported it. 7-Eleven supports it. GoPuff supports it. And local community groups have all supported it, many of which are advocates in the most vulnerable communities. So I think we have found a sweet spot on the policy that gets the business community, the local leaders, and the labor unions to support it and protects consumers. So I think there's a path there, but that's on the, again, if you ever got to that point, I'd certainly have recommendations, but I don't think you have to necessarily have the policy to stand up against the Commonwealth stripping control from local governments on issues that constituents care about.
Mr. Lott.
A question for our solicitor. Would we have standing there if we didn't have a band? would we have
I didn't hear
standing?
the end, Mr. Lott.
If we would not pass, if we don't have an ordinance banning bags, would we have standing to join a suit?
I think, if I could, I think these are, in listening to this discussion, I think your comment is exceptionally apropos in the following respect. There currently is no litigation. I haven't seen anything other than I've talked with Councilwoman Zawinski about this, but I have not seen any documentation. I have not reviewed that. At a minimum, I would review that for council, and I would share that with Solicitor Rudis as well, to be sure that we knew, quote, what we were getting into, and have a perspective in that regard that I could advise council as to what the exposure may be.
Mhm.
The next issue that I thought was rather touched on by Mr. Masur and County Executive McClure was that whether the county joins this or not, they would be covered. And that was Mr. McClure's comment, and I think that's correct. I would also take some issue with Mr. Masur's comment that, quote, there's safety in numbers, that if you have a lot of plaintiffs, it looks like there's more political heat on the Commonwealth Court. I would like to think that if it was Mayberry RFD, like Lower Mount Bethel Township, where I was solicitor for 25 years and went to the Supreme Court on a preemption issue only as Lower Mount Bethel Township and was successful because the constitutionality was an issue. So whether there's 10 plaintiffs or one plaintiff, as Mr. Masur indicated, it's either constitutional or it's unconstitutional. There's been some discussion about costs, and I haven't heard an absolute proviso that there are no costs. If you join in a lawsuit and a judge summons the president of council to Harrisburg for argument, or the solicitor, certainly there would be some expense in that regard. And I'm not sure, I heard Mr. Masur say this, that there'd be no discovery, there would be no briefing, it would be handled by the Philadelphia Law Department. That could be true, but it also could not be true. There may be discovery, there may be expert witnesses, the court may appoint a master. There are a myriad of issues that need to be addressed in that regard. The last thing I would say is from this discussion is that I hear from Mr. Masur, who sounds very knowledgeable, and on top of this, nothing can happen until July.
So why do we rush it?
So here we are in January without the documents. So the issue becomes is, how does council consider that? It is not my job to tell you what to do or what not to do. My job is to tell you what the perspectives are and how you should look at it.
Can I add one more thing that was
Yes.
helpful?
And then-
And I think to Mr. Lott's question, one thing that has come up certainly in calls with other townships and their solicitors has been some other potential, because you had asked a question about harm and standing and would you need the ordinance? A set of attorneys and solicitors have thought that other criteria would give localities harm and standing. And so just so you know what some of those have been, and again, I'm saying this not to, certainly your own solicitor will tell you what their legal opinion is. I'm not an attorney, so certainly don't take my legal opinion because that wouldn't probably be good legal advice. But some factors have been, if you have an EAC that has recommended implementing plastics policy, that could put you in a potential place for standing of harm because you're in between your local constituent EAC, which is asking for a policy, and the state, which is saying you can't do the thing your EAC is recommending you do. If you have an ordinance introduced, if it's passed or not, and there's sort of clarity that you're saying, we'd like to consider it, but we're also not wanting to consider it if you're going to preempt us and we don't have clarity of the law, that could give standing. Or if a locality has like a zero waste plan or a climate reduction plan that includes recommendations for policies that deal with the waste stream. Those are just some other factors that have come up, just so you know, that the solicitors and other places have said, we think these would meet the criteria of harm. So,
I want to clarify something. When I had discussed this with you, David, I thought you said that the lawsuit would be in February.
that is I think the planned date for trying to, the goal would be, I think, to try and file in February.
So can you clarify what Solicitor Spadoni and the county executive McClure said, in that we wouldn't be able to file until July, or somebody wouldn't be able to pass an ordinance until July?
I think the question, as I heard it from the county executive, and I'm sorry if I missed it from Solicitor Spadoni, is about when the county could, the earliest the county could get an ordinance on the books vis-a-vis the preemption, and the earliest today, if you started today and there were no hurdles or anything else, you did it just soup to nuts, could be today, July 1st. But the minute that we're over the, the window of less than 6 months to July 1st has crossed, then you get pushed into the 6 months after the emergency order is lifted timeframe of that language, if that makes sense. So you could do it today. And again, I'm not, in theory, you could do it today and enact it. But the minute that you're under that 6 months, to get to July 1st, it'll trigger the second part of the language in the fiscal code. 6 months after the emergency order is lifted would be the earliest you could do.
So theoretically, we have a resolution drawn, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to vote on it anyway, because we do not have the language of the litigation to put in the resolution, because part of the resolution here is that the cost would be covered by the City of Philadelphia's law department, and that's not necessarily anything that we have solidified. And we do not have the actual litigation in front of us. So when will you have the litigation that you would be able to share with us? Because I think you said if we had decided that we might want to move forward, or we're thinking of moving forward, that we would have some say in how that litigation was written.
Yes. As best as I can garner from the Philadelphia Law Department, I think they're trying to finalize a memorandum of agreement and other documents within the next 5 work days, give or take, as far as I can tell. So.
I think Ron and then Lori. Mr. Heckman, sorry. You're on mute, Mr. Heckman. Mr. Heckman, you're on mute.
Now I'm off, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Hold on. My computer cord went. Yeah, first of all, I want to say Tara has brought the importance of environmental issues to council over the past few years. And she has been a tireless advocate, and no one appreciates her passion for this crisis more than I do. I do appreciate what she's doing. And whatever I say about this in no way diminishes that. She's talking about an existential threat that we have to deal with as a world, and we're all involved in it. And I agree with Mrs. Mazur said it, and all the people who were involved in this. My concern right now is a couple, and one is, if I may, it goes to what Mr. Meyer said and Mr. Lott said. We have shown support, if I may specify that in 2019, January 24th, 2019, we passed a resolution of the Northampton County Council establishing the provisions for a ban of single-use plastic bags and straws. And that was adopted by the entire council. And part of it did say the environmental services coordinator shall have any and all support of the Northampton County Council, material or otherwise, to initiate educational programming and produce educational materials for the purpose of generating municipal interest and education about the reduction of single-use plastic waste. Now, that was the world of January 2019. I guess the question from that world would be, did any of that happen? I mean, if we haven't done that, then if that hasn't happened, I'm leery about how much we can go beyond that. So that would be a concern. And let me just finish. So council has made it clear that they are very concerned about this. And I believe the reason we did it at the time, if my notes are correct, was that at the time an ordinance was brought up that we really have no power to inflict a fee on anyone. We are not that legislative body that can do that. That's if a municipality wants to do it, fine. Pennsylvania government is structured in such a way that's just how it works. So on that, I'm concerned. I guess part of my concern also is Philadelphia has they have their lawyers, and they certainly can outrank us when it comes to lawyers. I mean, our solicitor would probably tell you they have lawyers hanging out of the windows down there that work for the city. But the governor putting this moratorium together, I don't know if it's unconstitutional. He has lawyers. So as a non-lawyer, I mean, what we seem to have here is we used to have that comic strip spy versus spy. We have lawyer versus lawyer. And one saying what I'm doing is okay, and the other one saying, no, it's not. And that's why we have so many lawyers in so many courts, with all deference to my good friend, Mr. Spadoni. But that being said, I do have concern, and my biggest concern, well, first of all, Philadelphia, I have to say, though, I do believe we have to rank Philadelphia in a world of its own. It's a city and a county all in one. It really defies definition by the rest of us in the state. They are constantly getting involved in doing things, and they have for as long as I can remember, even when I lived there. So the thing is, they have the wherewithal, they have the power, they've got a lot of things. I believe in the spirit of everything here, but to go back to something Mr. Lott said and Mr. Myers said, I don't see how I can support either one of these at this time. I mentioned 2019 as a different world, and it truly is a different world. I mean, we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and the only crisis that most people are facing right now is a global pandemic. People have lost jobs. People may not have jobs to go back to. Businesses have closed. We haven't had a cohesive policy on vaccines. When I took my wife to the doctor today, we went by the field house at Moravian, and the line was crazy. I guess they were doing some shots, vaccines. You had people in wheelchairs out in 30-degree weather in the wind, waiting in like a line that looked like it was a mile long. We are in a not a great way right now. And I'm sorry, but I just see this as people are hurting. And I think they're going to see this as just one more foot on their neck. And I don't, by that, I'm not trying to make light of it or diminish the importance of it. I accept the importance of it. It's something that should have been done years ago. Mr. Lott's right, this plastic nonsense. I mean, it's so prevalent in cars now. That's why so many things break. It's crazy. It was, and I do believe businesses would pass this on without any doubt. They passed everything else on. Of course, they're going to pass this on to consumers, but they're hurting people. I've talked to people, they're just hurting so much right now. And that's real life to them. I mean, this is something I don't think that this really is going to get to the heart and soul of their thoughts at the moment. I have confidence in the new administration and what they've said and what I've heard about getting these vaccines out, but we are still on the road to recovery. We're not going to get there for quite a while. But I can't at this time, even though I agree with the intent, in good conscience support this in January of 2021. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's a bad idea. I just can't support it right now. And I wanted to be upfront and honest about that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Vargo Hefner.
I had a question for Mr. Spadoni based on something Mr. Mazer said. If what I thought I heard was that Philadelphia would be doing the lion's share of the work and that it would have little cost to us. I want to know the accuracy of that, because if we sign on to litigation, does that not encumber us to pay some cost?
I also heard, I don't know how to answer that because I haven't seen it. But
Okay.
I heard Mr. Masur say the following, that there's, quote, a memorandum of understanding being floated around as to how this is to be handled. Frankly, until that is for review, any answer would be nothing less than a guess.
Okay, so we don't have enough information to answer, because that's my biggest
What I hear
concern.
too.
My biggest concern is the cost. Because again, agreeing with some of my colleagues, I'm concerned about putting the county in a position to incur any more.
Well, I need to be upfront about this. When I spoke with Chairman Zawinski, the discussion was there would be no costs. And I think that was the
This
discussion.
was my understanding as well.
That's what I discussed with her last week.
Right, that is what I understood. And so I think that at this time, we need to see, and from what I'm hearing from everybody else, that I understand that there are many important issues out there, but energy, environment, and land use is, this committee. So this is what we're discussing. And I wish I could find a way to make vaccines available to everybody very rapidly. But at the same time, we can't think that there aren't other things going on in the world. And I do believe that we need to look at the MOU or MOA. I think that we need to look at the language of the litigation, and that would be important to have for everybody. This is a discussion. This isn't up for vote. And so I wanted to have this discussion to gauge the feasibility and also see what other information that we need. And it's clear that we need more information from Penn Environment and from the Philadelphia Law Department. We need to make sure that Northampton County will not encumber any costs. So the MOA is really important for us, and also the language of the litigation. And for this reason, I think we can safely table the discussion on single-use plastic ban, which was our number 2. And I am, at this time, I'm going to table the discussion on the joining of Act 20 litigation until we receive more information on the MOA and also the language of the litigation. And I'm not going to say that this issue is necessarily dead, because I think there was some really good discussion, and I think there is some interest, but we just need a little bit more clarity and some definitive paperwork on what is going to happen. I do think that it serves our constituents in our county to make sure that we keep these preemptive violations in check, and that we maintain our power, and also act on the behalf of municipalities so that they can maintain theirs. I think that's important. But at this time, I definitely want to thank Mr. Mazer for coming today and giving us this presentation. I would ask that you provide the MOA to me and the language of the litigation when you receive it, so that we can find a better path forward if this is a possibility. Okay? Very good. Brief discussion on the Penn East Pipeline, January 13th. There was a public comment with the Department of Environmental Protection on the Chapter 102 and 105, which is the water and the erosion and sedimentation, I believe. And following that, on January 19th, Penn East was taken off the docket of FERC. And I did want to relay this news to the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee. I'm sure the county has been informed of it, but this was a huge thing that Penn East was taken off the agenda because it was citing that basically there were so many comments. FERC wanted to resolve all the comments, and also the litigation that has been set forth needs to be resolved before Penn East can move forward with anything. And the comment from Chatterley, the new commissioner, he said basically that Penn East was a prime example of allowing conditional approval, and that conditional approval being abused to allow eminent domain. And this now is going to be a consideration of FERC in every pipeline moving forward, whether or not to give conditional approval and whether or not that it should allow a pipeline to use eminent domain. That's a big issue for people in our county whose land has been threatened to be taken or has already been taken by eminent domain. And I think that's worth relaying. I want to definitely get to the presentation regarding parks and recreation. Is Sherry Acevedo here?
I didn't see her sign in.
I think Brian is.
Oh, Brian Cope's actually in the building. Okay, very good.
Good evening, everyone. I am here, Brian Cope, Superintendent Parks and Rec. I do have a presentation briefly here. Perfect. Thank you. So we all know COVID-19
Excuse me, Tara, can I interrupt
Yes.
for 1 second?
Sure.
I'm sorry, before Brian starts. David got blocked on Zoom, unmuted, and he just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to speak this
Oh.
time, and he'll be back. He kept getting stuck, so I didn't want to interrupt Brian, but he did want to express his thanks.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that as well.
Sure. So Happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone had a good holiday break here. It's good to be back in and looking forward to 2021. We all know 2020 was a dilemma for many of us to start projects, stop projects, move them forward again, to only have them stop once more. But within Division of Parks and Rec, we've been pretty successful last year to get some things done moving forward and really set ourselves up for 2021 in the future here. I just want to go over some accomplishments, and most of this will be review, but just to let you know what happened in 2020 here. Down arrow. Okay. So as we can remember at the very end of 2020 here, Ned and Linda Heindel made a great donation to the county. This was our 19th park addition preserve, located in Williams Township, 76.76 acres. Hexenkampf Ridge and Rock are located directly in the middle of these 5 parcels that were donated to us. This is really a testament to their long-term conservation. Ned and Linda and Heindel, as you know, have been pillars of preservation within Williams Township, and also have helped many years within the county getting programs started, technical advice, and so on and so forth. But we just want to keep this beautiful property in the forefront. And as you can see here, we've gone over this, but just to keep moving for the sake of time. In 2021, we're going to be going out and doing a survey of the boundary, putting our park signs up for everyone, especially the neighbors. And we're looking at clearing and blazing some minor hiking trails so the public can safely walk through this area. We'll also look at doing some invasive plant management control, and that's something that we're doing in all of our parks right now. So not too much at this park. It's a preserve. We don't really want to have it overrun with people and keep it pristine as it is now. One of our other major land acquisitions, this one's years in the making as well, Norfolk Southern acquisition. This is at the trifecta really of three major trails within the county, the Plainfield Township Trail, the Stockertown Trail, and what will be the connection up to Jacobsburg State Park. This 1.5 acres roughly is really the conjunction of all of these trails to make this north-south section of the Two Rivers Trail, which would ultimately connect the Appalachian Trail to the city of Easton and the DNL. So this was years in the making. We're really, really excited to move forward with this. We have the adjacent landowner just to the north. We're working out with an easement with them to get us down to the Route 33 corridor, where we have all permitting, engineering finalized from our previous work that we've completed. Our new park signs. As you may notice, as you've driven around the county, all of our new parks, or all of our parks, have new signage. This was finished up in early 2020, probably about this time last year. It's really a significant visual increase for our park system. Some of the older signs were wood, they were made from our park staff, but this really sets us apart as this is a county facility. We care about this place, and you can see our care and efforts are going to continue, and this is the first start for this. The Norbath Trail, funding from County Council and the administration helped put forward this to secure DCNR funding. We finished 2.5 miles of the trail. The other half are actually under construction right now. I know they did some removal of the surface for phase 2 between Weaversville Road and Clear Springs Drive in the borough of Northampton. They just finished up the ADA ramps, the concrete work that would need to be completed within the borough itself, where it goes through some of the neighborhoods. And as weather gets a little bit warmer in the upcoming weeks or months, we'll be able to finalize asphalting and close out phase 2 for this project. And then we could really look at the bridge replacements and finish out the Norbath Trail fully reconstructed in 2021. The Mincy Lake Corridor Greenway plan, about 1,000 acres plus, that the county owns, maintains, operates in several different park situations, such as Tots Gap, Bear Swamp, Archery Complex, Mincy Lake itself. And this planning study has been underway. We're working out the final details of having our first public meeting, which would be sometime in mid-February. We'll make sure all information gets out through us to let the public and you guys know, so we can have some good discussions. Our consultants of Simone Collins have been doing focus groups. They've had 3 different focus groups. We've had some excellent conversations with our federal, state, and local partners. We've had education and recreation component, and we also had them interview our park maintenance staff, because those are the people that are really going to be day-to-day operations and maintaining and looking over the improvements and so forth. So they just finished up on that. We're going to have like I said, our public meeting and our second planning committee coming up in February. So stay tuned for details about that. Last year, Jim Wilson in our department helped finalize some historical interpretive signs, and these will be placed at Fry's Run. This is something that we're looking at to initiate in all of our parks, especially at kiosks that we're working at developing right now. 3-panel kiosk at each intersection or each trail or park is something that we're looking to do in 2021, which would show the history and interpret that for the public. We also would show regional location within our park system, how it fits in, and then also having a map of the park itself. So this is something that we really want to look at enhancing education for the public, whoever's using our parks. Mincy Lake reopening. Sorry, was there a question?
I thought it was Sean.
Okay. Mincy Lake reopening ceremony
Kevin's going to do the, so you're not
was held during
mute
the summer.
everybody for me, huh?
Well, I mean, if you really want to, something goes horrible.
If you hear noise.
We had
Lori, we can hear you.
Yeah, Tara, I think you got a mic open.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lori's. I'm trying to find it. There, she's done. Okay, thank you.
So in the middle of COVID, during the summer here, we had a Mincy Lake reopening. It was actually scheduled for April. As you may know, it got pushed back. But it was a great event. We had Senator Scavello, County Executive Lamont was there. I believe Tyler, you were there. Fish and Boat Commissioner, Representative Emmerich. And it was a great turnout, although small because of restrictions. The dam was finalized at Mincy Lake with Fish and Boat. The water has been raised, and we've been ongoing throughout the summer to really do some improvements, especially some in-lake habitat improvements. Friends of Mincy Lake has been and continues to be a great partner in this project. They've raised over $150,000 so far for structures. This is work that was completed both by Park and Rec staff with Northampton County and PA Fish and Boat. We would have loved to have some volunteers there, but with COVID, Fish and Boat was, they were not allowing any type of volunteers except staff that was with county. So our guys were up helping out build these porcupine cribs. I believe there was over 100 placed in over about a week's time, and 10 turtle basking platforms were placed. This year, again, in 2021, we're looking at doing another 30 to 35 porcupine cribs and maybe another 10 turtle basking platforms. So we'll continue to enhance the in-lake habitat. Out of lake habitat, we've been extremely successful working with scout groups and the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society. We have placed 2 purple martin towers, one on each side of the lake. We've had 10 wood ducks built and placed around the lake, 4 barred owl areas, and we've also placed 12 bluebird boxes. And this is all within the lake area or Bear Swamp in the woods. The Osprey platform, the PA Fish and Boat and the PA Game Commission, we're extremely excited because this is kind of rare and never really happens in such a quick turnaround. We put this platform out in 2019. In 2020, we had a pair of osprey claim it, and they actually had 3 fledglings. So they've never seen a turnaround that quick where a structure's been up. Osprey has moved in and had a family. So 2020, it's been its own year for that kind of thing. So Eagle Scout projects. We've been extremely successful this year, or this past year, with the Eagle Scout projects. We had 3 different Eagle Scout do our projects within our park system. This top left picture shows bird boxes that were developed and placed at Louisemore Park. I believe there was a total of 15 that were placed. The young lady developed them all, built them all, and came up with the concept to place them. They worked with our staff and Lehigh Valley Audubon to get the diagrams and placement and everything like that worked out. So they're there now. If you walk around Louisemore Park, you'll see them. We're starting to see some bluebirds come in and actually start checking them out. So we're hopeful that they'll be placing themselves in there for the spring and summer here. These 2 pictures on the right, we actually got this idea from a Lehigh Valley mini grant awardee down in Humor Park in the city of Easton. They're journaling stations. So anyone can use these as a place to draw, to read. There's some education, flora and fauna of the native plants and animals in the area. And it's kind of like where you see those library boxes, so you can put books and things. These can be placed so you could put some markers or colored pencils or things like this. And they're centrally located with great overlooks. These 2 are up at Mincy, and we may look at doing some of these others in other places within our park system. Up at Mincy as well, excellent site within the woods that shows the old trout hatchery that was once in this place. Planter Row, Lehigh Valley, our community gardens, once again, we're full. We still have a waiting list. We're actually looking at possible expansion a little bit more, but there was over 500 pounds of food that were donated by people that use our community gardens, and they go to 3 different food banks at Diefendorfer, which is on the western portion of the county out towards Wayne A. Grube Memorial Park. They donate theirs to Second Harvest Food Bank. The ones that are at Louisemore Park, they get donated to 2 food banks within Easton. So we've trended within the top 3 over the past few years now since they started this. So it's really great to see that our community gardens are being used both for food for whoever's using it, but any additional are being donated to help others in need as well. Landscape conservation, this has been a priority of mine, I guess you could say, of kind of getting rid of some turf grass and really managing our environment a little bit differently. If you've been at any of our parks over the summer, you may have seen we placed some of these new signs. Why is the grass taller here? We're letting these go, some of these areas grow. It improves wildlife habitat. It gives a little bit more of a visual when you're walking around our trails and in our parks as the wind blows and so forth. But we're also looking at planting different types of warm season, cool season grasses. We've planted over 150 trees last year. And we didn't get to any stream restoration, but that's definitely in store for 2021. In 2021, we'll also be doing some major plantings at Gulf Farm within the 7-acre restoration area that we cordoned off last year to take out of ag production because it's mainly within a floodplain area. And we're looking at doing some restoration at Fries Run and possibly Frost Hollow. So under our division, we provide livable landscape grants for environmental work, municipal park acquisition development. 5 grants were approved by County Council for the municipal parks. We had 1 OSI environmentally sensitive, which was a conservation easement. And then we had another grant that was a regional trail project, which I'll touch on. And that was funded out of the livable landscape. So a total of just under $1 million. And these projects we continue to see be major accomplishments within the county at the local municipal level, helping regional trails, but also our local parks for all of our residents. So that $500,000 grant that was passed through the administration and approved by County Council, and thank you for that, was matched fully by DCNR at the state level. So right now, the D&L trail between North Catasauqua and the borough of Northampton has $1 million setting aside to get going and get that trail built. They're still waiting for approval for a DCED grant. They applied for a Greenways and Trails grant that would help kind of finish off and prioritize some of the additional costs that were associated with this. But this project, because of our funding and us taking the initiative and the state backing it, it's going out to bid probably within the next week or 2. So we're really looking at getting this section of the D&L built most hopefully this year. This would be the last section of the D&L within Northampton County. So this is a major hurdle we've been looking at, and thank you for the commitment of the funding to move it forward, because now we're at the where we can really get construction going and get this project completed. And here's a little bit where it's located. It's within that 7-mile section of the D&L that they've been prioritizing between at the north end of Route 29 or 329 between the borough of Northampton and Cementon within Whitehall, and going down to the Tillman Street Bridge in Easton. And this is on river left, right-hand side, and would really be a great connection, will be a connection that will also tie into what Lehigh County is doing in Catasauqua and extending that all the way down just a few miles south of, or a few miles north of Allentown's border. So this section is being built. It's getting its funding. And once again, we cannot thank you enough for putting that type of commitment towards it. And that's a good overview of all the accomplishments that we've done. We have a lot in store for 2021. So we'll keep you abreast of everything moving forward. Is there any questions that I could quickly answer? I know you guys have your upcoming.
No, I'm just really excited about everything that y'all are doing. Just even during a pandemic, you know, we're moving forward full steam ahead. So thank you for your commitment. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody else does as well.
May I ask a question, Tara?
Yes, of course.
Brian, a question I always ask you when I see you, so I'll ask you now. How are we doing with the nature trail up at Mincy Lake? Are we moving along? Are we looking at it?
Yeah, so we're actually in a couple different phases for that one. We were up. So the west side of the trail, we want to have an accessible trail that goes back almost a quarter mile within it. We had Board Safe that is doing our accessible boat launches, kayak launch. They have a great system. They were up with us. So we're starting survey work so we can center the line and then get out about 4 feet so we can get a better estimate cost of what that may look at. Friends of Mincy here is already looking at fundraising for that amount or what it could entail too. So we have people looking at funding options. There's a couple accessible foundations that really put money towards these types of projects. On Bear Swamp side, we're looking at the same thing to get across the power line because it's kind of 2x4s and some pallets.
Yeah.
So we're looking at getting those done as well. And then around the entire lake in the woods, we've been out, we've been clearing. We can walk that right now. I mean, I kind of call it the Appalachian Trail because you're going to wear through boots on some of those sections that we're going over rocks. But it is clear, so you can hike that. With the plan for the whole conceptual plan of the acreage up there, we're going to look at connecting up to the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area all the way down to Bear Swamp with a trail system.
Well, thank you, Brian. One day, Chris and I are going to go hike that thing. And thank you, Tara.
Sure.
Yes. Okay, so did you have anything else, Brian?
No, I don't. Just thank you for your commitment on everything we've been able to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Real quick, Tara.
Does someone else have a comment? Because I can't.
This is Kevin Lott. Brian, first I'd just like to real quickly comment on those community gardens. Every year when you give us a report, you say they're full. I think we should continue to do that. That's a win-win. If we can add on to that, maybe up at Graysdale, wherever you guys find a spot, that's a wonderful program. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I know you don't have time to answer this, but put it on, maybe you and I can get, where is the trail from the rails, the trail down in Hellertown that goes now is connected way down to Quakertown and can continue on with that. What's the status of tying Hellertown into Bethlehem's trail?
Sure. We just had a really good meeting through our regional committee. I met with Darlene Heller and some people from Wildlands. If the city makes it a priority to get through that section of Saucon Park, we can start looking at it a little bit further. They have a couple trail projects, especially in Ilex Mill on the Monocacy, that they really need to focus in on. They just got done with the D&L section. So we're looking at it as a high level of getting through from Saucon Park to Hellertown. But there's going to be some major hurdles. One of them possibly is Norfolk Southern again.
Yeah, I know there's some issues. That's why I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Anything else? If not, we'll just adjourn.
Got to sign out and get ready to come back into the next meeting.
Yep.
Exactly. Sign out, do it all over again. It's like wash, rinse, repeat, right? All right.